We will continue with part 9 of Federalist number 2. As you can see, this map here shows the situation in the year 1775, right the year before America declared their independence. And I've probably mentioned this line to you. This is called the Proclamation line of 1763. After France and England fought a 7-year war, actually they were fighting it in India, they were fighting it over here in this northern part of the United States, what is now Canada. And when they signed the peace treaty between France and England was signed, the King of England accepted not to let the settlers cross this line to the west. But you will soon see that as soon as the war broke out, the Revolutionary War broke out, and immediately after it was over, you could not stop the settlers from going to the west. So that was their hope, to populate this area. So it is relevant because in the course of reading the Federalist, you will see the importance of Mississippi River, which is this river right here. I mentioned this is Missouri. Oh, this is Missouri right here. And it connects to Mississippi and it comes all the way down here. And it pours into the Gulf of Mexico. So it's very important to keep that in mind, because for the people that were going to come to the South and live here, settle here, they wanted to make sure they had access to this big mighty river. This way, in case of, this way they didn't have to ship all their produce, everything they had that they were going to trade with overland, because it would be so difficult to send them overland to here. But it would be easier to send them on a ship, would come down here and they can send it wherever they wanted to. So keep that in mind when you look at that map. So we start with the paragraph that says, they considered that the Congress was composed of many wise and experienced men, that being convened from different parts of the country, they brought with them and communicated to each other a variety of useful information, that in the course of the time they passed together in inquiring into and discussing the true interests of their country, they might have acquired very accurate knowledge on that head, that they were individually interested in the public liberty and prosperity, and therefore that it was not less their inclination that their duty to recommend only such measures as after the most as after the most mature deliberation they really thought prudent and advisable. So he's saying that when these delegates got together in the Constitutional Convention at Philadelphia, they came from all these different states. And each one of them brought their knowledge about their area that they lived in. So we see that in the convention they could communicate. They could tell the other delegates about the special situation that they lived in. And with that in mind, with that wisdom in mind, with that knowledge in mind, they worked out a plan, this Constitution, so that it would answer all of their needs. It would not just be good for the New England states up here. It would be good for the southern states. It would be good for the middle states here. Just keep this in mind, that the Constitution we are presenting to you is a work of compromise. These people talked with one another, learned from one another, realize that there are things that have to be in the Constitution for the southern states to accept it. There are things that have to be in the Constitution for small states to accept it. So as you read this Constitution, people of America, think about that we had to, after exchanging information, we had to come up with this compromise that would be best for you. Now, in the next paragraph, these and similar considerations then induced the people to rely greatly on the judgment and integrity of the Congress. And they took their advice, notwithstanding the various arts and endeavors used to deter them from it. But if the people at large had reason to confide in the men of the Congress, few of whom had been fully tried and generally known, still greater reason have they now to respect the judgment and advice of the convention. For it is well known that some of the most distinguished members of that Congress, who have been since tried and justly approved for their patriotism and abilities, and who have grown old in acquiring political information, were also members of this convention and carried into it their accumulated knowledge and experience. So he says, a lot of the members of the Continental Congress that served the country from 1774 all the way through the war, and they've shown that they're patriotic, and over the years they've learned a lot. They have a lot of experience on how government works. They've learned a lot from the mistakes of their state governments. They learned that from 1776 to 1787, this last 11 years, all the mistakes that were made. So with their wisdom, with their knowledge, and with the fact that we know they are patriots, they love this country, they have come up with this new constitution for you, so you prosper and be safe and not be worried about your safety, not worried about the future of yourselves and your children. So he's encouraging, John Jay is encouraging the people of the people of the states of America to unite under this new constitution, to ratify it, to accept it. One of the things that I want you to remember when you're studying the founding of the United States is the distance. See, right now we get in a car, and especially because of all the roads and interstate highways and everything, we can easily get from point A to point B, okay? For example, I live here in Oklahoma, okay? Norman, Oklahoma City area. And from here, all the way to here, San Diego, 1,500 miles, nearly 1,500 miles. I can drive, just depending on how much I rest, in approximately 30 hours. Over the mountains, in the desert, just go. No, non-stop. I can go, if I were to go non-stop for 2 or 3 drivers, you could do it in less than 24 hours. But when you read the history of the ratification, you'll see that, remember, this is the state of Maine now. But at that time, it was part of Massachusetts. 2 of the delegates here to the ratifying convention of Massachusetts, when they went to Massachusetts, it took them 6 days to get there. Or remember I told you for a carriage ride for like a 30 to 50 mile carriage ride, it would take them 15 hours to go. So keep in mind the distance, and that should give you an idea when some of these people that are called anti-federalist, when they criticize, they say this is too vast of an area for us to unite. Just kind of look at it from that angle too. And always ask yourself, these founders, the ones that we call real wise, if they lived in our time, with the communication we have, with the speed of travel, with everything like that, how would have they written a new constitution to unite these states? And that's what we are doing. We are trying to learn from the American experiment in federalism, with the Canadian experiment in federalism, and other places, as well as you looking at the European Union, its weaknesses, its strengths over this past 30 to 50 years. Learn from it, and hopefully with that lesson in mind, we can get together and write a constitution to unite humanity. Because we are so close now. Like I said, a letter to come from England to any of the states and go back would at least take 60 days at that time. 60, 75 days, just depending on what kind of ship you were on. But it could not be faster than 60 days. Now you can instantly communicate a letter, things like that, anywhere in the globe. So just keep those stuff in mind as we go forward.